Hello, welcome back to my channel. So we're reading Smart Money Woman by Arese. We're currently in chapter 3. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. So our last video we saw Zuri was in a fit. She was broke. Her family couldn't lend her money because they had their own problems, and she had finally confronted her landlord, which I'm happy about. So to the reading. Chapter 3. Where's your money going? It was Saturday morning, the day Zuri had set aside to begin the process of tackling her financial situation. A track from MI's new album was blasting from her iPod speaker. Ilekuwasi ise owo mi fi alubarika si. Everything we dey fear right now go turn story. We'll all be rich. From cooking with kerosene to the back of limousine, going where we never been to seeing things we never seen, from buying food inside newspaper to the front of magazines. When they see you tomorrow, they won't recognize that they have seen you before. I'm wishing you money. I'm wishing you wealth. She danced around her apartment and sang along to the words, "My ginger is on 10." It was odd, but the words from the song gave her hope. Hope that even though she didn't have a clear plan to pay off her debt and find financial stability, she would figure it out eventually because she was motivated. She had decided to deal with this financial situation the same way she would tackle a task at work, logically. As she sorted through the paper bag that acted as a filing cabinet for all her bank statements and service charge bills, she puzzled over where exactly all her money had gone. She earned about 600,000 naira a month, which frankly was a lot of money and way above the average Nigerian salary. So, where was it all going? What was she spending it on? As she rifled through the bag, she noticed that most of her bank statements were unopened. It dawned on Zuri that she had been extremely careless with her money for an incredibly long time. There had been months at a stretch she hadn't even checked her bank account. The statement she had looked at, she had only paid sparse attention to. She sorted through the statement, arranged them according to dates, and used her highlight pen to categorize her spendings. Blue for meals, pink for accessories, green for her car, and so on and so forth. As she pored over her financial life, she came to an even more depressing realization. She had always been afraid of her bank statements, and she hadn't how her precarious life really was. Subconsciously, she had always known she was spending mindlessly, but never wanted to confront her spending habits because it made her uncomfortable. She told herself she worked hard and earned good money, so she deserved to splurge once in a while. But what was evident from this exercise was that she indulged all the time. Damn. She couldn't believe how much she spent alone on dinner and cocktails with the girls at RSVP and Spice every month. An exhausted Zuri sat back and stared at the now neat stack of papers on her dining table. She had spent hours analyzing the statement, trying to make sense of the numbers. It was painful but eye-opening. In fact, she had a new philosophy. If you truly wanted to know about a person, look at their bank statement. Apparently, the picture her bank statement painted was that she was an obese alcoholic with an unhealthy bag addiction who owned enough ashwebi to open her own mall. Who is Ria, and why did I pay so much for ashwebi, for goodness sake? But that wasn't who she was it? Why then did the money she had spent not reflect her values? She had decided the best way to make sense of everything was to put all the money she had collected under her 6 biggest spending categories: rent, utilities, food, transportation, wardrobe, and others, and began to make sense of them in relation to her annual income of about 7.2 million. The 2.5 million she paid annually for her 2-bedroom apartment was easily her biggest expenditure. She had read an article once that described Lagos as one of the most expensive cities in the world, and she couldn't agree more. The unspoken success and wealth connotation of living on the island had made Phase 1 one of the most desirable parts of town. Even though she loved living there, she couldn't help but think she was living in an upmarket ghetto. The bad roads, inefficient power supply, and sometimes filthy water was not exactly high-class living. Luckily, she was only paying a year's rent upfront. Most Nigerians had to pay too. The utilities were fairly easy to track because she had been receiving monthly service charge notice from Mr. Okeke, facility manager, that detailed the cost of diesel, PHCN, water, security, refuse collection, and other maintenance services. These all added up to her quarterly service charge bills. If she added the cost of cable from DSTV, her internet subscription, and the amount of money she spent on buying credit for her mobile phone, she was spending roughly 500,000 a quarter, which came to about 2 million a year. When it came to transportation, it cost about 8,000 a week, or about 32,000 a month, to fill the tank of her car, which usually lasted about a week. That translated to 416,000 a year. If she included the occasional Uber ride, which which was lifesavers when there was fuel scarcity or her car was in the mechanic, she would be spending approximately 780,000 naira on transportation that year, excluding car repairs. In her head, she took apart the true expense of her guilt-free pleasure: her wardrobe. Shoes at an average 180,000 a pop. I've bought at least 10 pairs of designer shoes in the last 12 months, which added up to just over 1 million on shoes. Ashwebi, attending weddings for people I don't even know cost me about 60,000 a month, 720,000 a year. Haba, and that's without designer. With tailor, another 480,000 for the year for outfits I will never re-rock. The more Zuri looked at it, the more ludicrous and ludicrous it seemed to her. The pomp and circumstance of being a wedding guest. If you attended a wedding, you had to wear the ashwebi as a symbol of your support for the bride and groom. In some cases, you may not even be allowed to enter the venue for the reception if you were not wearing said ashwebi. As she caught a glimpse of one of her vigorous lounge dresses peeking out of her closet, she did a quick calculation on everything in the last batch of wardrobe expenses. Nigerian designers. She had spent a pretty penny shopping at Zazie, the new department store at Balarabe Musa. She had spent 1.8 million on outfits in less than 12 months. It wasn't that the pieces she bought were particularly expensive, it was the frequency of her purchases. You could say many things about the city of Lagos, but it was never boring. There were events every weekend. If it wasn't a wedding, there was some kind of fashion event. or new restaurant opening, and every event required a new outfit to kill on the red carpet and make it to the blog, to big blogs like Bella Ninja or Linda Ikiji. The comment section of Ninja blogs were always brutal. Zuri stared at the Excel sheet on her MacBook Pro that now had detailed information on how she had spent her income in the last 12 months. She was an odd mix of fear. She was an odd mix of fear, annoyance, depression, and excitement. She had no savings, no assets, and that worried her. She would have to get serious about her finances and be disciplined. If she wanted to get herself out of this situation and not repeat her mistakes, it frightened her if she was being completely honest. It frightened her if she was being completely honest. But it made one thing clear. She was going to have to go on money diets. And first up was to clear her debt with Mr. Okeke. Even though a plan to tackle the threat of her debt had begun to form in her head, Zuri still felt at sea. She knew she would have to make some changes to her spending if she was going to be on track in the long run. She had to forgive herself for her money mistakes. They were in her past, and what mattered was that she was doing something about it now. As she considered how brutal her spending diet was going to be in the next few months, her thoughts were interrupted by a loud banging on the door. PHCN had decided they weren't going to provide electricity today, and so the doorbell wasn't working. She wondered who it was. She wasn't expecting any guests, but the banging was a little too familiar. "Abeg, hold on. Abina, you get out," Zuri shouted. As she looked through the peephole, she realized it was her security guard. "Suleiman, what is it now? Why are you banging on my door like this?" "Sorry ma, I been dey think say you no fit here as light no dey," he said in placating tone. "Person can't drop something for you," he said as he handed her a rather large but fancy gold gift box. "Thank you." This looks suspiciously like Ashwabi. The packaging for these things are becoming fancier with every passing wedding. For the life of her, Zuri couldn't think of whose wedding it could be. She didn't remember paying for any recently. As she read the card that came with the box, she felt even more confused. Hashtag Abeta. Abeta care. "You are invited to Abena and Tayo's wedding," the card read. As the realization hit, she started dialing a number on her phone. "Hi darling, what's poppin'? Tammy, why is Abena sending me Ashwebi? Are we friends? I mean, I've only met the girl a handful of times. Wait, how did she even get your address? Calm down. What's the big deal? She said she wanted to invite you to the wedding and asked me for your address." Tammy laughed. "I thought it was nice of her." "Nice? I don't have money to pay for Ashwebi right now. Abi, is it free? If it's free, that's fine. Besides, when the people start sending Ashwebi before payment?" "Zuri, you are overreacting. It's just 30,000. I told you about my financial situation. Now, there's no just with one kobo of my money right now. I spent the last couple of hours going through my bank statement, and it turns out that just 30,000 translates to a lot of money over a period of time. I've decided I'm only buying Ashwebi for close friends' weddings, otherwise it's such a waste." Tammy was roaring with laughter. "I'd like to see how you will pull that one off, with weddings every other weekend in this Lagos. It's not even sure what you are I'm not even sure what you are complaining about. I'm one of the bridesmaids, and if you see the list of demands, you will cry. There's a cost of bridesmaids dresses. She would like us to all wear matching Sophia Webster shoes. There's money we will have to contribute for our hen night and bridal shower. Abeg, the list is long. Before it's over, I will have spent at least 300,000, and you are complaining about 30,000. That is ridiculous. When you are not the one getting married, darling, it's just what you do for friends. Remember that one day you'll be engaged and expect other people to pay for your own. Trust me, with what I'm going through now, I doubt I'll be subjecting other people to any unrealistic demands when it's my turn. As she got off the phone, Zuri began to make a list of all the things she had to quit spending on. Excuse me. If she had any real chances of paying Mr. Okeke. Goodbye Pro Flex gym membership, she thought, even though she loved the way Jide longevity classes made her feel. She knew she had to make some sacrifices in the medium term. She would rejoin later, but for now, running on the Lekki Ikoyi bridge would have to do. At least that one was free. Other was a huge category for her. It mostly included money she had withdrawn from the ATM and she couldn't account for properly because she had a hazy recollection of what the cash was spent on. Tips, petrol, a quick stop at the grocery store, when their point of sale machine went working. Still, Zuri decided she would limit herself to 20,000 cash a week and make it a point to make a note on her iPad each time she spent money. She would also put herself on a budget for her phone. She was definitely spending a lot on credit and data, having meaningless telephone and first-time conversations with her friends. It went without saying that she had on a clothes purchasing ban for at least 6 months. From now on, she would either wear the clothes and shoes she had in her wardrobe or she would sit her behind at home. Eating out also had to be cut down to only special occasions for the next 6 months or till she figured herself out. Zuri decided that avoiding her bank statement and not checking the balance of her account was no longer an option. She would set money dates with herself on Sundays to see how much she had spent each week and stay in track with the goal she had set for herself, and with regards to how she would cut her spending. Cut spending by 50%, she spun in her chair and grinned in relief. Zuri was excited about her social life for the first time in weeks. She was having the girls over for dinner instead of going to eat at a restaurant. In a bid to balance her now frugal lifestyle with some much needed fun, she had told them to bring something, a bottle of wine, dessert, something to contribute to the dinner party. They were a rowdy bunch, so she knew that the night would be full of laughter and fun. God knew she needed a night like this so badly. She had been on a spending diet for about 6 weeks since her big aha moment. She had intended to cut her spending by 50%, but found it unsustainable. She could only manage to set aside about 35% from last month's salary, so she had 250,000 naira sitting in her savings account. It wasn't nearly enough to cover her debt, but it was a good start. She couldn't even front and pretend to be completely happy because it had meant cutting out a lot from her life. The spending diet actually felt like a juice cleanse, but either way, she was starving. She was trying to make it a habit to keep track of everything she spent in a notebook, which she reviewed at the end of each week. If she was honest, it was exhausting. Penny pinching was not her thing. It was hard and she wasn't sure what frugalista life was for her long term. The struggle is real. She missed her weekly trips to Zazie to splurge on her favorite Nigerian designers. She had spotted a new clan dress on Instagram that she knew she would have bought instantly if she hadn't put herself on a clothes ban. And she definitely was experiencing severe FOMO, the fear of missing out. When she saw pictures of her friends at RSVP having cocktails, if she was being completely honest, she felt deprived and it was exhausting. It had been a tough sell getting the girls to come to her house for dinner on Friday night instead of heading to the hot new bar that had just opened. Tammy, Lara, Adesua, and Ladun had relented after I bombarded them with text messages. They were always so much fun. It was almost 7 p.m. and her guests had started arriving. I have always loved this flat. It's so chic, Tammy said as she sauntered in. I know, right? I'm always telling people how Zuri got such a great deal on this flat, Lara said. It has so much space and it's finished really well. I can't believe you only paid 2.5 million, especially on this particular street. I've always loved the left side of Lekki Phase 1. It's still fairly residential compared to the rest of the estate, which has become too commercial. Tell me about it, said Ladu as she rolled her eyes. I don't know how you guys can live here. There's just too much going on this at once. Domino's, Ebano, the filling station, the traffic. That's why I love living in Ikoyi. None of this mess. Tammy and Zuri shared a telling look. Ladun was an area snob. She thought living in certain areas in Lagos was beneath her because they were too pedestrian. She was one of those girls that made annoying statements like, I don't do the mainland, or I only cross Third Mainland Bridge when I'm going to the airport. This is ironic to the people who knew her before she married Bode, who was from an old money Lagos family and grew up in Ikoyi and became brand new. Ladum actually grew up in Ijesha, which was in fact on the mainland. I don't know, Adeswa chimed in. It's a really nice flat for sure, but don't you think living here is a bad idea for Zuri? I mean, she's single, and this is the sort of show of words that drives guys away. Zuri stared at her blankly. She was used to this annoying line of conversation from Adeswa because she was one of those women who believed a woman must downplay her achievements to seem more attractive. She had shared with the girls on several occasions how she lied to her husband about how much she earned before they got married. Zuri still could not figure out why a woman had to make herself seem much smaller to accommodate a man's ego. Adeswa was an associate at a top law firm in Lagos. She was married to Soji, who did business. Although it was an open secret that they depended on Adeswa's salary to survive, still, Adeswa kept up the charade that Soji was a breadwinner, preserving his pride. Should I live under the bridge now because I'm single? Asked Zuri. My mother doesn't live in Lagos, and frankly, I like my space. The thought of sharing my comfortable living with a distant relative until someone decided to marry me is depressing. I tire. Oh, Lara chimed in. I've never understood this logic. Please, I believe you attract what you want in this life. If a guy is intimidated by the fact that she lives in a 2-bedroom flat, then he should keep it moving. That's not the type we're looking for, I beg, she hissed. Abio, Zuri, please don't listen to Adesua. Before you come and attract a type that is hungry and looking at you to feed him. Ladum laughed. This reminds me of a client I had fitting with today at the studio, Tammy said. She's a banker. She's single and she was lamenting about how she really wanted to buy a Honda SUV, but her mother won't let her. Not because she can't afford it, but because her mom believes that it will make her seem too independent and drive potential suitors away. Can you believe that? I couldn't stop laughing. The girl was so upset. That's the society we live in, Adeswa replied. The women all nodded. Men greatly feel threatened if you seem just as successful as them, or even worse, if you are more successful than them. It's just wisdom when you downplay it. That's not true, Adeswa said. Zuri laughed. I don't know lots of Nigerian men who are married to women who are equally as successful as them, and they seem very happy. These days, no man wants a woman that's a liability. I think it's all about finding a balance, Lara said. I love earning my own money, but I need a man that can look after me. Forget all the 50-50 nonsense. My money is my money. His money is our money. They all busted into laughter and high-fived each other. Plus, I have a Chanel addiction and that I fully intend my future husband to fund, she added. And it would be nice for someone to share some of their financial burden, the financial burden I carry, sending my siblings to school. Even though I earn good money, the financial responsibility of looking after my family takes its toll sometimes. And the truth is, I always feel like no matter how much I make, I'm spending it on others faster than I'm spending it on myself. Lara was an oil and gas big babe, status granted by the fact that she was an oil trader and with great pay and a job that took her on regular trips all over the world. She had cafe all late. I'm sorry, I don't speak French, but she had cafe something skin, a tiny waist and generous curves, which went a long way to attract the array of rich men, both single and married, who were constantly spending on her, sending her gifts. She was always very secretive about her love life, so none of the other girls were ever sure if she was actually dating any of these men or if they were just rumored rumors based on the guys she had been seen with around town occasionally. Her father had died when she was very young, and as the eldest daughter, she had always felt responsible for looking after her mother and her three siblings. Even though she earned a lot of money for her age, a good portion went to paying university fees, plus rent and living expenses for her mom. They were all in awe of her sense of responsibilities because even though she complained from time to time, they knew she couldn't see herself doing otherwise.